All right, let's get going. Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday, and thank you for joining our August Eloqua user group meeting. I will be your host for today, and you will get a copy of this recording. So hopefully this afternoon, we will send that to you from our own Eloqua instance. We do ask that if you have questions, please enter them into the Q&A, or you could enter them in the chat if you'd like. So I am, I guess I said, your host. I'm KP, or Karen Pendle. I've been in the marketing world for the last 16 years. 2 years before that, I was in sales support at a little tiny company called Under Armour. It actually was a pretty small company back then. And the last 16 years I've spent with myself as a marketing practitioner, learning a lot of facets of marketing, not just digital, but a lot of things actually outside of digital marketing, a lot of things on trade show floors and doing things by paper back in the day. Like scoring by paper was, well, dangerous with paper cuts. But anyway, the last 12 years I've spent working with a lot of companies, helping them solve a lot of their marketing challenges, sometimes sales challenges, IT challenges as well, and hopefully helped a lot of them achieve their goals with those three groups. And I've learned a lot myself, what works, what doesn't work, but I'm honored to be your host for the Eloqua user group meeting. Eloqua is the first marketing automation platform I got to learn, thankfully, back starting in 2005, and it's where my deepest expertise lies as far as MarTech. I'm based in Nashville. Those are two of my pups. I need to get a new picture. I've had this one for a while, but that is from, I think, June of this year. We have 3 dogs and 3 cats here. So hopefully this won't just be another meeting where we all get a meeting. You get a meeting. My calendar has been nuts lately, but I don't know about you guys. Hopefully this will be helpful. If you have to leave early, no worries. We're gonna, like I said, we're gonna send you this recording so you can pick up where you left off. I'm gonna start with some reminders. I always start with reminders, quick little tips to help you stay in the know of what's happening in the Eloqua world. Like right now, and also in September, we've got the Q3 or 21C Eloqua release. So we're gonna hear about it in detail from Tamina and Abhinav from the Oracle CX Marketing Product Management team. If you didn't know, that CX Marketing name is the latest, greatest term for Oracle Marketing Cloud, which was called Oracle Marketing Cloud the last few years. So CX Marketing, same thing. And then we're going to switch over to talk about an Oracle solution. Some of you may have joined. It was about, I think, 8 months ago, we heard from the DataFox team at Oracle about DataFox, but this presentation is going to be a little bit different. We're going to see more of DataFox, which is a tool that helps salespeople. That's usually a big win there when they're prospecting accounts. However, it also helps marketing, like with ABM efforts, such as account scoring is one element of that puzzle. So Ryan and George from the Oracle DataFox team are going to go through, actually Ryan, Dave, and George are going to go through some things about DataFox, show you DataFox pretty in depth, and talk to us about how that will help us on the Eloqua side. So specifically, how does it help us Eloqua users? And then I'm going to cover off Eloqua Sandbox tips or Eloqua test environment tips. There are some lovely things about those sandboxes, and then there are some not so lovely things. Sometimes I call it a litter box, but overall they're a good tool to have. And I'll give you some tips if you do have one or are thinking about getting one. And then we'll just end with Q&A. So that, again, if you have questions throughout this webinar, please pop them ideally into the Q&A. Makes it a bit easier in Zoom for us to make sure we don't miss any questions. And if you have any tips, please, you can enter them in the chat, or if you want to speak, I can definitely just chat to me over Zoom, and I can unmute your mic so that you can speak and share a tip at the end of the webinar or meeting, whatever this is. Okay, some relevant reminders to keep you guys in the Eloqua know. So like I just mentioned, this month, and actually the date there, August 28th, is outdated. Forgot to update that. Now it's going into mid-September. Only for Pod 1 and Pod 2, you can see here the schedule. This is the latest, greatest schedule for some new features, some fixes to be coming out in Eloqua. Every quarter, this happens through Oracle. Of course, along the way, they have hot fixes where needed, like all marketing automation platforms do, but they follow a nice, clean schedule of every quarter. They let us know and actually have their own webinar on the Oracle Product Management team, which they had a few weeks ago about this release. So you can always stay ahead of it and know what's new coming in Eloqua that I should consider using. What might I want to beta test? And they share that too, like what's coming out might sound really cool, But if it's only in controlled availability, some people love that. Some people don't want to do controlled availability or beta testing. So next thing here is, so if you don't know what your pod is, I always do this just to make sure people know how to find their pod. So here's our Eloqua instance. I can find my pod number by, once I'm logged in, you have to log in first. Then you will see this number here, P03. That means we're in pod 3. So feel free to just check yourself. There's instructions, of course, in the Eloqua Help Center for this, but it's pretty easy. Log in and look, basically. And here's the segment I created to actually see how many folks are registered for this webinar. So let's just see how fast it does it. There we go. Same number. Not very exciting. Okay. Just a reminder, Eloqua Training. We work with companies. I work at Sojourn. We help people who have Eloqua and Marketo and Carta and other MarTech. And it gets frustrating for us, for me, myself personally, when we have customers who don't take any training, don't know how to use Eloqua, don't set things up in Eloqua, probably because they don't know how to, and don't ask anybody else for help. Or in some cases they can, they don't have budget, but you have free training at your fingertips. I always want to point that out. And actually this came from also a user or two. A couple people asked me over this past year or so, where can I get some free training? The company I work for their own reasons, does not have budget aside for me to take Eloqua training. I understand that. The first 2 years I worked at a company that didn't invest $1 in me to learn Eloqua. And I could barely say Eloqua better yet know how to use it. And that was back when it was harder to use. So the Help Center is now loaded with videos. It takes you to YouTube to watch them. Here's their YouTube channel as well, where you can watch some videos. Yes, some of them are very elementary and 101 level, but you have to start somewhere. But then a lot are not and go in more depth. So Help Center, the free videos that you can get to from the Help Center or go directly to the YouTube channel. And Oracle University has the Eloqua Explorer, which is only a short amount of time to go through all the courses. It's a great place if you want to have somebody yourself or maybe somebody on your team just get an understanding of the basics of Eloqua. It's very basic. So Eloqua Essentials is the next thing that you would want to tackle, but you do need to have a university paid subscription or pass to take some of those classes. Last thing here is if you ever miss an Eloqua user group meeting, so we want to make sure you can tap into things that we have shared in past meetings. You can always watch those on our website. We actually use Uberflip with our website, which is through WordPress, and have it set up so we can make it really easy to pop these recordings there. And they're on our YouTube channel. So with that, I would love to pass it. Let me do my little PowerPoint thing there. We're going to hear now from Tamina and Abhinav from, again, the Oracle product management team that focuses on CX marketing. And these two are going to share with us what I'm excited about to hear about are these new features, specifically in the 21C release. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you guys can take over.
Hey, Karen. Can you allow me to undo my video? Right now, I'm not allowed.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, of course. What a stinker I am. Okay.
Actually, say hi to people.
Yeah. Make host. There we go. You should be able to do it now.
Okay. Great. Hi, everybody. Welcome to an overview of the 21C release. If you were on the customer meeting a few weeks ago, you're going to see a lot of things that are exactly the same because it's the same release. But this is a smaller group, so it also gives you a better opportunity to ask questions. And then I have my colleague Abhinav on the call, and he's going to walk through an exciting features in 21D release that are coming up. I do have an asterisk by the August 13th through 28th, as Karen showed previously on some updated dates, and I'll talk through them. So first off, we do have our safe harbor statement. This especially is going to apply to that forward-looking features that Abhinav is going to talk about. Sometimes the timing of the release changes, and that's an example. So here, these are release dates as Karen showed. To give an insight of what happened is we were releasing to pod 6 on Friday the 13th. That may have been an omen for us just in general, that it was Friday the 13th. And what ended up happening is there was a customer configuration that started interfering with the maintenance updates that we were doing. So every release we do maintenance on the pod, and then we also release the new feature set. And so because we were breaching that maintenance window, we postponed the release for pods 1 and 2. Interesting enough, all the pods did receive the maintenance, but pods 1 and 2 will get the release features in September. And that just has to do with vacations and scheduling that we had. That was the first weekend that we were able to do that from a resource perspective on our side, and making sure we weren't interfering with key elements. So you will be getting that release if you're on pods 1 and 2, and just know that we were being safe in making sure that we didn't disrupt the maintenance window even more than we had as we were fixing this one customer configuration issue. Karen was very good to show how to find out your pod number. Here's just a bigger view of that. By the way, there's a lot of information on our Topliners page. I highly recommend that you join Topliners and go to our Oracle Eloqua Release Center. We do updates there all the time. We host information, there's videos and detailed resource notes there as well. We also do a supplemental release resource center on Oracle, and here's a bit.ly link that you can use to find that information. Also being able to find out what was released and when. And we published this a few weeks before the release, where we give a new feature summary, and then all the different release notes are then released on the day of the release, the day of the first release. So you can go and look at that information, but also be able to review what was released in the past. And for those who are not familiar, we do 4 releases a year, and you can see this pattern of A, B, C, D, A being in February, B in May, C in August, and D in November. And then the number before is the year. So it's a very predictable time of when the releases will happen. On our release resource center, we also put a lot of product notices in place, just so that we can make sure that everybody knows the changes that we're making, because we're continually making investments to make our APIs more robust, make the application more robust. Data privacy and security are very important to us. So we continue to make updates, and this may affect some of our integrations. We want to make sure everybody is aware of that information. I'm going to hit some of the new product notices specifically. So first off, blind form submit URL shortening. We have released I would call it a data security feature around blind form submits. We are looking at more ways to continually mask PII. To be honest, many of our customers already are very good about not including PII in this blind form submit link, but we have some customers that are doing that, and we want to be able to protect everybody. So this is available to everyone. One of the reasons why we haven't just rolled this out is we want to make sure we don't break anybody's links. For most of our customers not using blind form submit, you can easily opt in, and then everything net new you would have in place. You can call support to have this enabled, and they can talk you through that information. And then there's also that product notice that you can look up. And once again, that link is in our product notice page. So if you were on our Eloqua release readiness, you could go to that product page. So another one that's coming out is our content marketing end of life. The reason we're end of lifing this is we have a new product called Oracle Content Management, which can get very confusing in the name, but we have new features and capabilities in this new product. And that's one reason why we're end of lifing this old one, is we have a new one that's more robust and available for customers. We are discontinuing the LinkedIn Sales Navigator app. This has to do with a decision on LinkedIn, not necessarily with us. So just be aware if you're having this embedded in your profiler. So looking through some of the enhancements, one of the things that we're continuing to do is continuing to invest in Redwood theming. This is the design language that's coming in through all of Oracle products. And we're continuing to add this into our dashboards area right now. And continuing, you'll see in future releases how we're continuing to invest in this updated theming. So you have a cleaner, more look and feel that's very consistent with CX products across the board. This is one of my favorite features coming. It may seem simple, but there's actually a foundation that's going to very much help our customers. After everyone receives the 21C release, we on product will enable this. So you may not see it yet, but it is going to be enabled by a beta flag that we have in place for all of our customers after the release. Once again, we need to wait for 21C to hit our pods 1 and 2 to be released for our pods 1 and 2. But we're going to make it very easy for you to find the certificate management options within the user settings. Right now, you have to go to microsites and manage certificates, and we're creating a new area so that it's easy to find it. It's in more of a management section. And then you'll be able to see that information and be able to see if the type of certificates and give some more details there. Another thing that we've included is email notification reminders of expiring certificates. We have been emailing customers related to their certificate expiry, but now it's going to be automated. So you should be able to get that automated reminder of when these certificates are going to expire. This is also putting in play a foundation for integration with a third-party application called Let's Encrypt. And this is my safe harbor statement and wasn't talked about in the release briefing. I have to give you something new that you didn't hear in the other one. And in 21D, our goal is to roll out automated certificate provisioning. So if you only need a DV type cert, then we'll be able to automate that certificate provisioning and renewal without you having to go back and forth between a certificate authority. Those who are needing an EV type cert, those being sorry, train of thought left for a second, financial or healthcare, will still be able to help you with that. We also are releasing an integration with Maximizer, and this is a way to identify your audience. So for example, let's say a visitor is exposed to an email offering offering them relevant content on the telecommunications industry. When they visit your site, you want to see them to see the same content, whether they open the email or not. So in Maximizer, you can create your web campaign for that telecom industry. In Eloqua, you create your cross-channel campaign, and then you can select your audience and email and then decide which web campaign to show the visitors. So it's helping create that seamless customer journey experience with Maximizer between email and web. We've done a lot of updates with some of our APIs. I'll go through this quickly because you can see more information in another place, but currently when OAuth token endpoint returns a 401 unauthorized error, there's little detail provided. But with the 21C status of 401 unauthorized, the response body will now include more detail with new properties. And this will allow you to see on why they're receiving that error and then how they can take action on it. We've also updated for APIs with form processing. So currently when submitting form data, the create form data for single form endpoint, form processing is synchronous, meaning it's happening one right after another, and meaning a response is not returned until the whole entire process is completed. So think about all your form submission, form processing steps being completed. But with 21C, we have an API that does everything asynchronously. And this actually allows for a more reliable, more stable processing, and then also consistent, faster response times on that. So there's also, we're able to handle larger volumes of data. So this is actually going to help our marketers and those especially using the API have a more consistent experience. And those using our Form Submit app, this feature was actually transitioned over the Form Submit app late last year, early this year. And so that app was already starting to benefit from this. We continue to invest in anything with our stuck records, people that, some of you may find you get stuck records using an app on our campaigns. We're continuing to invest in this area. Also with our bulky API, we've done updates with when an external ID is used as an identifier field, the bulk API will extract and match on that indexed ID. And then we'll also now accept encoded surrogate pairs, which are typically emojis. So now we'll start accepting some of that. So you can see the developer change log for a full list of changes related to all of our API updates. In the lines of data security, we are also making changes with some Cipher suites. We tried to do this last year, but customers needed time to migrate over to these Cipher suites. So we're announcing that we're finally putting this into effect, and certain Cipher suites will be removed and others will be added for support. We're also making retention changes in our lead scoring area. It used to have 750 days, but now we're going to be only limiting it to 365. And we noticed that this should have a negligible impact on our customers. One reason that I've kept this pretty light is I want to move into the biggest project that the entire team has been working on the past year. This is a very strategic initiative that we are doing that'll help bring native SMS type functionality right within Eloqua. And with that, I am going to pass it on to Gian. Sorry, not Gian. That's our another coworker, Abhinav. Sorry, Abhinav.
Yeah, no worries. All right. So, Karen, I think I get the same problem with turning on my video, but I'll doing the presentation.
Actually, okay, let me, I've made Tamina the host. Let me take care of that for you and everybody else. You should be able to now.
All right.
Yeah.
Tamina, could you go to the next slide, please?
We can see you.
Yeah, thanks. All right. So we have been receiving a lot of interest and requests from our customers about the ability to orchestrate using SMS natively in Eloqua. And that is something that we have been working on for the last year. And as Tamina alluded earlier, like a lot of the team has been focused on getting this out to the market, which we are hoping to do as a controlled availability feature in our 21D release, the one that goes out later this year in November. Coming back to talking about the feature, with this coming in, we'll be able to orchestrate SMS campaigns or rather cross-channel campaigns from within Eloqua natively. This would sit alongside email, and we'd see a little more as we go through the slides. But this is the capability being offered, and we would have marketer-initiated campaigns that would be available initially in the first few releases. And because Oracle is offering this feature natively, we are also going to take care of aspects on setting up the codes, working with partners / aggregators for terminating the messages, everything. We are releasing this in a full service model in which Oracle would be responsible for taking care of all of those aspects. So you wouldn't have to manage partner relationships for setting up code, for sending messages. And so would be the case for billing, where it would be a unified billing from Eloqua and not like from individual partners. So this was just a very high level sneak peek. Let's get to the next slides where we get into the various aspects of the functionality a little more. To start with, we would have an SMS setup area where, as I said, since it is a full serve model, we would be setting up codes, requirements for which we would be receiving from you. So as we receive, we would get the codes and have them set up, which you would be able to come and view in the view codes area of SMS setup. And this is a typical screen as it would look for viewing of the various codes. And in India, there's non-negotiable compliance that is in place, which is required for all marketers to send messages. And that is called the DLT registration. So we are making provisions for like the compliance to the registration has to be set up outside of Eloqua, but we are making provisions so that you could send messages from Eloqua in a compliant fashion. So that's the other setup screen that we would have. It would be here. I don't have a screenshot for that, but that's the other thing in the setup space. Next, please. All right, so SMS messaging is highly regulated, and more so in some specific geographies And to keep that, keeping that in mind, and in order to facilitate that messages are sent in a compliant fashion, we are introducing preference management at 2 levels. One would be at the contact level, which would be the SMS global subscription. So with this introduced, you would now have 2 global subscriptions, one at the email level and the other at SMS, each having a global subscription at contact level. And then there is a phone number level preference, which is for the mobile phone field and the business phone field. We are going to support these 2 fields out of the box initially. And when both of these are opted in, only then will the message be sent to a phone number. So if there's interest about how this is going to work and etc., I can get deeper, but for now, that's about the preference management that we're introducing. Next, please. This is how the SMS Launchpad looks like. Functionality, you have already been using the Launchpad in other areas like email, like landing pages, etc. So this is similar. We have treated it very differently, and as you might have noticed by now, all the SMS screens are in the Redwood theme that Kamina was showing earlier. Parts of Eloqua have already started to appear in that theme. So this is all in that brand new theme. We'd be able to look at all our assets. There would be some quick metrics. Again, this is not part of our first release, but then we have a vision to get there where you can grab some quick metrics right on the Launchpad itself without needing to get into the reports. And then this again is your point from where you can get into editing messages and viewing stats, etc. Can we keep going? Next one. The next one would be editor. And on the editor, we have a bit of an orchestration of its own on the SMS editor itself. Now, all of that orchestration is not going to be available with the first release, but there is MT and MT plus MO type of messaging that we are going to support. And a little bit about this. MT stands for marketer initiated is the biggest nature, and within that, MT stands for mobile terminated, which means messages originating from applications and getting terminated on mobile devices. And MO are mobile originated messages, which means the other way, they originate from devices and come back to the application. So with the combination of MT and MO, there can be a total of 3, MT, MO, and MT plus MO. A pure MO use case is something like you are just driving down and you see a brand's advertisement where they say to get a certain benefit, send this code to a certain number. That's a pure MO use case, which we will not support initially, but that does not mean that we would not listen to keywords. If a reply is coming in response to a message that is gone out from Eloqua, which means the MT plus MO category, we would be listening to replies. And if there's a message that you want to send further in response to those replies that came in, we would be able to process that. So in all, we are going to support the marketer initiated flavor, the subscriber initiated flavor, or rather the pure subscriber initiated flavor would come in later. And there are also 2 purposes to the messages, transactional and promotional, but these are more indicative, more housekeeping. You could choose any purpose, the functionality doesn't change, but you'll be able to view reports, sliced and diced by purpose as one of the views. A quick view of the settings, again, very similar. We would have the type of the message, the purpose, a few codes to select, and then as I was referring, the DLT selection, but this is purely for India, so if there's interest or need for sending to. Next, please. This one is another view of the editor, and to quickly talk about it, this indicates that we will be supporting field merge, links, keywords, and special characters on the message. And there would be an out-of-the-box shortening of link that's going to be available. So you wouldn't need to shorten links through other sources and bring them and use. They can be shortened by the Eloqua application itself, and if chosen, can also be tracked in always, like the way Eloqua supports today. And again, if there's no personalization used, we would also give a character in split count because message is very character sensitive. Cost applies to how many characters, one more character makes 2 splits. All those indications are going to be available on the edit. Next, please. This will be on the campaign steps, and we are going to have two steps, one for sending SMS and the other for evaluating click-throughs. The send SMS has one of the settings, as I was mentioning earlier, to choose either the mobile phone or the business phone field to send to. And the rest of these steps are quite close to the other Eloqua campaign steps that you're already used to. And so would be the case with the click-through SMS step. If there's a click that has happened from the message, you'd evaluate that and get back. One question that keeps coming up, and which is why I think I just call that out explicitly, is that the SMS campaign doesn't need to be a campaign of its own. So if SMS can be orchestrated along with email, along with any other campaign steps as you may wish, there's no need for SMS or email to be separate dedicated campaigns of their own. And the last one, this will be on reporting. We are going to have reports at various levels. You would be able to see contact activities in the activity log on the contact card view. You'll be able to see the recent activities related to SMS. And then if you go to the activity log tab, there would be detailed SMS activities about sends and bounces and clicks and like the other standard metrics that we've captured. And we will also have operational reports at the SMS level. This view that you're seeing is at the SMS level, where you would have a detailed view of sends, delivered, clicks, etc., and all the good stuff there. Plus, there would also be an operational report at the campaign level, which would give you a quick summary of like how each message on your campaign is behaving, performing. So I think that was all. I mean, I think that's the last slide. Yeah, with that done.
We had two questions come in for you. One of them was, can you use the custom object field merges in an SMS message?
Yeah, so we'll be supporting field merge on whatever source it has been created. Any field merge that's created can be used on the message. You would not be able to send to a CDO field. If you're storing your phone number in a CDO field, that is not supported, which I think was clear. We are supporting business mobile phones, but yeah, a field merge based on CDO is supported.
Okay. And then the other question was, when you select transactional, will it override the unsubscribed status?
When I select transactional, okay, so there's a way. Again, the screenshot didn't show that, but on the campaign step, you would have the provision to override should you wish. So we would not choose to override by ourselves. It will have to be a choice indicated somewhere on the campaign step. Yeah, in the sending options that would be available.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Great. Just one thing, if you're not getting our Eloqua release emails, you can easily sign up using this little bit.ly link, ELQ release. And that's it from our side, Karen.
Excellent. Thank you both. That was awesome. SMS, I know a lot of folks are considering doing it. It doesn't necessarily make sense for everybody. However, I recommend, if you guys aren't sure, like, it's another channel. I know a lot of marketers want to be multi-channel, omni-channel marketers and achieve, everything under the sun. But it really is helpful to look at, like, for instance, with your web analytics, what devices are people using when they're navigating your website? Are they using mobile devices a lot? Are they using more desktops? Are they using Windows, Apple operating systems? And that'll help you to narrow down how much of your audience really is using mobile. Typically, if they're using that for their web experience, it's a great opportunity to reach them with email, SMS. So anyway, just some things to consider when you're trying to figure out if SMS makes sense for your audience. We see it more oftentimes used for customers. So helping them along to good customer experience, not necessarily for prospects. Of course, there are some industries like higher education. When you have a student that fills out half of their application for your university, it's nice to prompt them with a text message, but you also have to consider the audience and the age, and younger folks often are more on their devices and less in an inbox looking at their email. So anyway, without further ado, I'd love to hand it over to Dave and George from the Oracle team. They're also part of CX marketing. They're going to talk to us about Data Fox, like I mentioned earlier. So Dave, George.
Awesome. Thanks, KP. And Eloqua User Group, thank you so much for having us today. We really appreciate it. I'm going to share my screen here really quickly. And KP, can you just confirm you can see this here?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. I want to make sure I'm not just talking, you're not seeing anything. Well, great. Like I said, thank you so much for being here. My name is George Shu, and I'm part of the DataFox team here at Oracle. And so I actually work alongside a lot of your Eloqua account managers. So I am directly involved with Eloqua. I'm in the tool very often. So it really is a pleasure to be here. Dave and I are going to show you a quick DataFox demo, and we're going to stay away from slideware. We thought it would just be better to sort of dive right into this. And for the sake of time, it just makes more sense. So hopefully at this point, you've all been made aware of DataFox, but if you haven't, it is a company intelligence add-on that boosts Eloqua's ABM functionality. So kind of like ABM, kind of like KP mentioned in the beginning. And it does this in a few key ways through a flip of a switch integration. And so the first thing to keep in mind with DataFox, one of its key functionalities here is that it stamps firmographic data. So things like name, country, headcount, industry, sub-industry, these components here directly onto your contact objects or your account objects within Eloqua. So if you think about this from a segmentation perspective, this opens a ton of doors because when you're creating campaigns, you are now being able to create them based off of account level attributes as well as the other attributes that are already natively within Eloqua. If you think about this from a dynamic content perspective, you can now incorporate these account level attributes to trigger certain content and really create that tailored, personalized message for your market. And then if you think about this from an enrichment perspective, DataFox gets rid of all of those manual components of enrichment because we're going to take on that task for you. So we keep all of these data points that you're seeing in front of you up to date and accurate, and make sure they remain accurate and up to date within Eloqua. So it goes on an enrichment cycle that stays clean and make sure that you have the most accurate data at your disposal for your campaigns, for your marketing initiatives. And so the second point here with DataFox, that's really a very important aspect of this tool is insight reporting. So understanding what your key customers, your ideal customers actually look like, and being able to create campaigns based off maybe some of these other attributes from a company perspective that you didn't think about before. And along with insight reporting comes this total addressable market expansion. So using filtering capabilities within DataFox to narrow down this list of 8.5 million companies down to a segment that makes sense for what you're trying to do, whether that's looking at your whole customer base, whether that's creating a specific campaign, what have you. And then lastly is account scoring. So as you can see here, and like KP mentioned, a big aspect of this for marketers is account scoring, because we know natively with Eloqua, lead scoring is a very strong component, typically based off of the title of a contact and digital behavior. But when you utilize a tool like DataFox in tandem with Eloqua, you now have an account score that's completely customizable. So you have a full 360-degree view of a customer. And so with that, I'm going to show you quickly what it looks like to look at an individual company profile. So let's pick on Zendesk here. And right off the bat, when I plug that in, you're going to see the data points that we're pulling, right? So all of these key firmographic attributes. And keep in mind, when you are connected with Eloqua, what's happening here is we're stamping this data directly onto those objects within your marketing automation system so you can use them. So from an actionable perspective, we're pushing this data over, and then you can utilize it from a strategic way with your campaigns, like we already mentioned. Here you'll see a description of the company. You can see your account score. That's not just here for Zendesk, but all 8.5 million companies within DataFox. And I'm going to quickly show you how this is relevant and what you can do with it in a second, but just keep in mind it's here. Underneath of that, you have keywords and technographics. Keywords are really powerful from a dynamic content perspective, because let's say you're already segmenting campaigns based off of industry or sub-industry, or creating dynamic content based off of those attributes. Think about using keywords as a way to get even more granular. So you can use these to trigger that content in a way that is much more creative and much more personalized than you could previously. Again, technographics, so the technologies a company is using, similar companies that are like Zendesk, hierarchy information, funding information, as well as your company email patterns and your switchboard, and conference data. So, in this case, Zendesk, what conferences are they going to be part of and have been part of in some capacity? Beyond this firmographic page here, you'll see that we also provide signal data, right? So this is information that's coming from news articles and press releases. You have the ability to filter the ones that you care about, because granted, you're probably not going to want to track everything about a company, but maybe certain attributes or certain signals really appeal to your business model. So you have the ability to pick those and really go along with what makes sense for you. And so with that, I'm going to quickly show you in terms of, expanding your total addressable market. You could have the ability with DataFox to add filters. So as you can see here, we can break down that list of, 8.5 million companies down to, a specific segment that we're looking for. So for the sake of this, why don't we just plug in quick data points? I'm going to do, why don't we do country actually? I'll do United States, but as you can see, there's a ton of different options here to get granular. I can go to industry, and as you can see, not only do we provide these high-level industries, we provide sub-industries. So I'm going to click information technology as a whole. And then why don't we break this down by what Oracle considers mid-market? So between 500 million and 2 billion in revenue. And then I'm going to apply that. But before I do so, I also want to show this. So in terms of data, not only can you incorporate DataFox information, but also custom data, whether that's in your CRM, whether it's in Eloqua, whether it's somewhere else, you can incorporate it here to really get granular for what you're looking to do. So after I create my filter, you can see that we now have a list of 804 companies that match what we just searched. Insight reporting, like I mentioned, this is understanding what your ideal customers actually look like. So what attributes are most relevant to either your customer base or this particular segment that you're running. And basically what you would do here is get an idea of, what goes into these companies so I can replicate that, or maybe I can create a tailored segment based off of these attributes. So if I can click in here, just to give you an example of what this looks like, you can immediately see we're providing headcount, funding information, the keywords that define this list, this particular list that I created, what defines the accounts in them, as well as a further breakdown with the Z-score. So we show you how the number of accounts in your list compared to the number of accounts in all of DataFox for each one of these categories here. So that really helps you in terms of prioritization and basically creating an account score, because it shows you which attributes here are really relevant to you. So again, here's just more attributes or more data points that we're sourcing, including conference and public list information. And then lastly, that scoring component. So you have the ability to create your customizable account score that really gives you that 360-degree view of your customer or your prospect or your contact within Eloqua itself. And so, before I pass it off to Dave here, one thing worth mentioning here, besides, we already went over conferences a little bit, but we do provide that conference data, but also list building capability. So you have the ability to create unlimited amount of lists here, whether you're creating segments, whether this is for something else. But what's pretty neat here is you have the ability to not only click in here and have that immediate white space, but you can get that summary of your accounts with some of those key data points that as a marketer are beneficial to know about your customer base. You can get an understanding of what signals are coming out about them from news articles and press releases, see other similar companies based on the ones you have in here, and get an idea of the conferences that they're attending or have been part of in some capacity. And of course, you can set alerts for these, you can download into spreadsheets. So you really have a lot of functionality there. And so without further ado, I'm going to pass this off to Dave, because he's going to show you what this looks like within Eloqua and how that integration really plays. So Dave, I'm going to stop sharing and pass the baton. But thank you.
Okay.
While he's doing that, can you please, we have a couple of questions for you. There's one in the Q&A and there are two in the chat. Could you please?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Sorry, Dave.
Okay, all right. So the good news is for Eloqua users is that the DataFox add-in is conceptually and technically very, very simple. As George was saying, really what it does, it adds an extra, I believe, 12 fields into the record. So you're going to see this in segmentation. You're going to see it in emails when it comes to merge fields, as well as dynamic content. You can actually use it in lead scoring and things like that as well. So what I'll do, I'll kind of take you through it. As I say, it's pretty simple here. So if we start off with the segmentation, obviously you've got your usual fields. We're looking at industry. Everybody's attributes are different depending upon your business. But if I drop this down, we'll start to see these DataFox fields appear, and there are 12 of them. So the first two you see is account score that's built within DataFox based upon all of the attributes in there. And then based on that account score, you can add them into an account tier, which is kind of a roll up into a few buckets. And then the individual attributes as well. So here you might say, look, any company that has a keyword of retail or health or again, whatever it might be, you can build that. You can also combine. So here you could take any of your DataFox attributes as well as the tier or the score, kind of the roll-ups, and mix it with other data that you've got, and then maybe you want to save that off as a shared filter and so on. So the good thing here is that if somebody does register on your site and they don't provide enough information, but you've got their email, instead of having to wait until you kind of know more about them, you can send them an email right away that's going to talk about, be pertinent to the industry and all of these details, so they get that in a timely fashion, as I say, rather than you sort of either send them something generic because you don't know that or having to wait. Okay, so that's in segmentation. Really nothing new. It's just those extra fields. Again, makes it very, very simple. Here I'm in dynamic content. This is driven from email, right? Dynamic content could actually appear in emails or landing pages. And it's the same thing. So you can see when I say it's technically and conceptually very simple, it's really just you've got 12 additional fields. Very powerful, but very, very simple to understand. So we can select that then again for changing the image, changing the call to action, or any kind of content that you've got going on there. All right. One thing you'll actually see here is that we have inside the contact record. So this is, profile. I can bring this up in Profiler. And there's a detail screen in here we can look at, and there's DataFox data in here that sits alongside, all of the sort of, groups of data as well. So it's going to surface there. But coming back into the interface, if I show you lead scoring, I think you already know what I'm going to show. Again, it's pretty simple. So if we come in and look at system primary score here, and cancel that, hit it twice, you can see we've got DataFox data appears alongside everything else. So it doesn't sit to a separate bucket. There's zero learning curve. It's just more power to you in all of these different areas. So again, here I've got the tier, but we can get a lot more granular than that. And that was my run through here, what I wanted to show. George, is there anything you would add into that?
No, Dave, I think you pretty much covered it. I think the thing to really keep in mind here is that this solution is really removing a lot of manual aspects of enrichment. I'm seeing a lot of questions about how does this compare to a ZoomInfo or a D&B. The one thing to keep in mind here is with DataFox, like Dave is showing you, we're providing that account level data. So we're not providing individual contact level information, which is really important to understand. But what we're doing is we're basically leveraging Eloqua's native functionality and bringing that account-based component to it. So we're providing that account-based data to help you create those campaigns from an account mindset as opposed to just that individual mindset. So that's really a key differentiator. Ours is much more focused on account level data and the scoring components to be actionable within Eloqua. That is really the key point there.
All right, and there's a couple more questions if you guys can handle those for us in the chat. I'm going to switch over now and do Eloqua Sandbox tips pretty quickly here. And everybody, if you have questions related that have nothing to do with the topics of today, this is still a place where we want to make sure you can ask those questions. So please enter them in the Q&A if you do have any, or if you want to chat me directly, then I can take you off of mute and have you ask your question. So while you're thinking, or if you have a tip to share, just let me know. So Eloqua Sandbox tip. So let me just back up. Not everybody has an Eloqua Sandbox or a test environment. Not everybody needs one, but if you have one or you're thinking about getting one, here's some important things to know. Especially if you have one and you didn't know these things and you're using it. First of all, everything that you, the way it works is Eloqua production refreshes, replicates, promotes, whatever term you want to do. All of that Eloqua production live setup is what gets pushed to your Eloqua Sandbox, not vice versa. A lot of other systems like CRMs, usually the test environment, you set it up, you test it, then you promote it or push it to production. It's the opposite with most marketing automation platforms. So you have to keep that in mind. You must rebuild anything you create in the sandbox in production. So factor that in. Like if you're doing testing of forms in your sandbox, now you're going to need to, once it's approved or you're good to go with it, now you want to put it in production. There's no magic button like I wish there was to promote parts of the sandbox to production. You have to rebuild it manually. Also, you cannot promote your Eloqua Sandbox to another Eloqua Sandbox. Not a lot of people need to do this, but it's a good thing to know that you cannot do that in case it ever did come up. Also, reporting is not available in an Eloqua Sandbox. So just keep that in mind. Some people want to be able to play around with creating custom reports. You would need to do that in your production Eloqua Insight. And pushing data from Eloqua production to the Eloqua, the data. So I should back up. Eloqua contacts, custom objects, account data, that's your live data. And actually this is good. We don't want that to push to your sandbox 90% of the time. So this is not possible. When you do the refresh, your Eloqua Sandbox, if it did have some dummy data in there, it'll be wiped out. Just keep that in mind. And if you do need to take some data, you can of course export, import, kind of do things manually. All of these tips, I've got a couple more on one more slide here, but they're all in a blog post that I wrote a couple of years ago that I think a lot of people hopefully found some value in, but we found it, that enough people found it helpful enough that we thought we'd share it today. So just continuing on here, Eloqua landing pages won't be live in the sandbox. So your microsite where your landing pages are hosted, you might have a couple of microsites or subdomains in Eloqua production today. Those won't be live in the sandbox. You would need to create one, ideally just to be used like one in your Eloqua Sandbox for testing purposes only. Otherwise, you can't build a landing page, click on it, and then see it live on the internet and test it, say on Firefox, on Chrome, on whatever devices. The landing pages themselves will push over to your sandbox from production, but you won't be able to make edits to them and then visit them live on the web. And there's more to that there as well with forms. So the forms will push over, but if you want to test the form pushing or test the form on an Eloqua landing page, it'll have a different form unique ID. So because it's in a new Eloqua instance, the sandbox is actually a separate Eloqua instance completely. So, and then my last tip here is if you have Eloqua integrated with the Salesforce Integration App, this does not apply to the native integration, which hopefully very few of you are still on, if any. But if you're using the latest, greatest technology to integrate Eloqua with Salesforce, which is the integration app, any of that setup as of now does not push over to the sandbox. It's a bummer. There is on the Top Liners community a feature request or an idea, it's called there, to hopefully have you guys vote for this. I'm going to bring it up and just show you. If you've never seen this, many years now, there's been the Top Liners community. And there's always had this area, they've had this area of ideas. Those are feature requests that we can send to Tamina, et cetera. There's various folks there that will look at these and prioritize them. Voting for them helps. Right now, there's about 41 people. All you do is you come in and you upvote it. I've already voted for it, so it's not going to work. They don't let you do it more than once, which is smart. Not sure what, I think I just took my vote out. Actually, let me fix that. There we go. So I would highly encourage you to vote for this if it applies to, if you have Eloqua and Salesforce integrated. What we'd like to see is that when we do push Eloqua production into the sandbox, if we have this integration app set up, all that setup would also push over. So we've got 6 minutes left. Just checking to see if there's any questions for me specifically. So in a nutshell, you've got these caveats to the sandbox. Some of them are a bummer. However, the sandbox still is a great place for people who are just learning Eloqua to play around and test things out. For form testing, if you're doing a big rehaul of your form strategy with Eloqua and you want to go from having like perhaps a form for every campaign to shared forms, which is where hopefully most of you are. If not, we've helped lots of people do that over the years. Not to say that you need our help, but I'm just encouraging you to not have a form for every campaign. Easier said than done. I get it. It's not like a big, easy switch. A sandbox can come in handy when you're doing that to try out maybe having one shared form with hidden fields to know where somebody got to it, what type of request it was, a download, a contact us, a demo, or whatever you've got that you're putting in a form in front of. If you have any questions about Eloqua sandboxes, please feel free to reach out to me. So let me see, what else do we have for today? Oh, I had one more tip. This is kind of a random one. So if we have a customer specifically who uses the sandbox and they have some people from their product management team of their software company that actually have access to their Eloqua sandbox, but not to production. They don't want these people in production. They don't need to be in Eloqua production. They really just are there. In this case, they're playing with Eloqua landing pages and forms. Those users will get wiped out. So if you have your sandbox, you add users to it, and they're not in Eloqua production, when you do the refresh from production to sandbox, they will no longer be in Eloqua sandbox, and they will be like, why did you lock me out of the sandbox? I can't get back in. Well, it would be because they didn't have a user there anymore. So you just have to remember to recreate them. So our customers, what we normally do is have a checklist of these items on it where it applies to them. Like if you don't have Salesforce and you don't have people using the sandbox that are not in production, you don't need that on your checklist, obviously. But if you do have a sandbox, it is a good idea to just have a list of at least the first like 5 things here to remind yourself, to remind anybody else that uses the sandbox, for your people who maybe step into your shoes one day. And then you've got always the link to our blog post, which it's all right there. You can just copy, paste, tweak as you'd like. So I'd love to be able to open it up and see who has any more questions, or if somebody has a tip to share. You'll need to chat me so I can unmute your mic. Let me just check the chat to see.
Oh, Karen, I just want to highlight, somebody asked about more information about the removal of LinkedIn components. So I did answer that in the Q&A with the product notice. But just as a reminder to everyone that we have a repository of product notices. And so I'm going to put that in the chat area as well for everyone, just to know that's the Release Resource Center, where they can find all the information related to the product notices and more details related to the information that we talked about today as well.
Yep. This is what I screenshotted earlier too. So this is great. I will tell you guys, I follow Adobe with Marketo. I follow Salesforce with Pardot and Salesforce Marketing Cloud. And not just saying this because Tamina and Abhinav are here, but this is the most organized, easy to get everything in one spot. Like, and the Help Center actually for Eloqua has screenshots in it, which I don't know why some others don't. Marketo does, Pardot doesn't. So anyway, thank you guys. I know you're not like responsible for all of that, but the product team as a whole.
We appreciate the feedback. We appreciate the feedback.
It helps. Good Lord, my 16 years in doing this, it has improved. So thank you. We have a question in here. Oh, that's actually an answer. Thank you, George, for handling the DataFox questions that have come in. You guys are probably going to think of things after we hang up here. We're about to do that. Again, please feel free to reach out to me or Dolly. I live like, I think 50 miles from her, so I can always touch base with her to see what she thinks about things. One day it'd be great to have her here. She might come one day, guys, so keep coming. Just kidding. Actually, I have no connection to Dolly Parton. So we'll meet again next month. It's always the 3rd Thursday of the month at the same time. And I'm looking for presenters. So if anybody would like to present, please let me know. And also, if you have ideas for topics you would like to see presented, there's been a few of you who have done that. Please keep doing that. Even if you've already done it, I would love to get your ideas. Like last month, I did an update on the Apple change in email privacy because, well, I just know it's a hot topic, but also somebody explicitly asked me like, KP, can you cover this on next month's Eloqua user group meeting? After the June one, she reached out. So I'm not an expert on all this, but I will pull in people where I'm not, and I will research where I'm not. We'll get you guys what you need. That is my job with this thing. So just let me know. All right, less than a minute left. Thank you, everybody. Again, hopefully this afternoon, if not tomorrow at the latest, I will send you this recording. And I hope everybody has a great rest of your Thursday, a nice weekend, and please stay safe and healthy. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.